Well, this just into the CBS News Texas newsroom. MedStar ambulance in Fort Worth has implemented its extreme weather protocol as the heat index is now over 105 degrees. That is the feels like temperature Scott was explaining. So what does it mean for you? MedStar is going to give a higher priority response to patients outside in unprotected areas. So far, crews have responded to 4 patients since the protocol went into effect just this afternoon.
All new at 5 o'clock, 2 police. Thank you, Rick. We'll see you in a minute. The dangerous conditions have MedStar, the paramedics in Tarrant County, activating their emergency plan. They will put higher priority on calls for patients outside. So far today, they have run on 4 calls because of the heat.
Well, as an excessive heat warning and heat advisory collide with the holiday weekend, health experts are warning those with outdoor plans to be cautious. The Salvation Army of North Texas had activated its heat relief services. This includes providing shade and water. Some locations also distribute free box fans. Allie Spilliard says more on the potential problems and response thus far to this blast of heat.
As the heat index soared to dangerous temps Saturday.
It's a little humid. It's very humid outside. It's like you're having to eat the air.
North Texans looked for relief wherever they could.
We're all dripping in sweat, but the kids got in the splash pad over there and that helped a lot. So now we're going to go grab snow cones.
With nearly all of the Metroplex under a heat advisory through the weekend, experts urged people to limit time outside.
Just today, we've already responded to 4 calls.
MedStar spokesperson Matt Zavatsky says that number was likely to rise headed into the late afternoon. Yesterday, his crews treated 12 people for heat-related illness with symptoms like fatigue, profuse sweating, and nausea, which he says often catches people off guard when it's humidity and not temperature alone, pushing people into the danger zone.
Because of all the rain and all the storms that we have had, the ground is pretty saturated, and it's unusual for us to see humidity levels like you folks report in the 70%, 80%. So even at 90 degrees, when you've got 80% humidity, that heat index can be up to 103, 104, and we start a special response protocol once the heat index gets to be 105.
So while some may debate just how hot it feels.
Hotter than Louisiana? No. I think they're mistaken.
Experts urge hydration, shade, and limiting some of that summer fun spent outdoors.
As long as we got water and somewhere we can lay in a river somewhere, we good.
Have a good day.
In Dallas, Allie Spilliards, NBC5.
Yeah, everyone trying to keep cool. In addition to keeping extra IV fluids and ice packs on hand in its ambulances, MedStar says it's also increasing staffing Monday with crowds expected in Fort Worth for Opal's Walk for Freedom. And we hope you...
Dylan mentioned, and as you'll have probably experienced, it is extremely hot out there. The heat will likely affect us as well for several days. Fox 4's Amelia Jones spoke with MedStar today about their calls this weekend and how you can protect yourself. Amelia.
Hey, Blake, yeah, it's important to know the symptoms and when you need to get inside to cool off. MedStar told us today that they've responded to 9 heat-related emergencies this weekend. This includes calls for heat exhaustion and heat stroke. So if you are going to be out in the heat doing activities, it is important to know the symptoms. MedStar says people suffering from heat exhaustion will start to feel dizzy, profusely sweat, or even feel nauseous. MedStar says this is when you want to get inside somewhere with AC and start to rehydrate. MedStar says if heat exhaustion goes untreated, it can turn into heat stroke. That's when the body loses the ability to sweat and regulate body temperature. That's when you need to call 911. MedStar says over the last few weeks, the patients they've seen are people who work outside, like landscapers or construction workers, elderly people, and people who just moved to the area.
We see the biggest spike in heat-related illnesses at the beginning of the summer because, again, the folks that have moved here from other parts of the country that aren't used to this kind of heat experience those symptoms, and just regular Texans who just say, hey, it's going to be okay. It's the beginning of the year. Won't be that bad.
Children are also very vulnerable to heat-related illnesses. MedStar wants to remind parents to watch kids closely if they're outside, even for a short period of time, and never leave a child in a hot car. In a vehicle, MedStar says that the temperature rises 10 degrees every minute. The same advice goes for pets. In fact, MedStar told us crews had to rescue a dog who was locked in a hot car this morning. Blake, back to you.
All right, Amelia, thanks.
You know, with those high temperatures mixed with humidity like we haven't felt in a while, that's a potentially dangerous combination. Check this out here. First responders, they actually answered dozens of those heat-related calls in Fort Worth yesterday, bringing their total to 50 patients since May, with the hottest months of the summer still ahead of us. MedStar is preparing to treat all kinds of emergencies, minor and severe.
We have a lot of new people that have moved into North Texas, and they aren't prepared. And they don't realize when we say it is hot in North Texas, it's not like a California hot, it's not like a New York hot, and people are just not accustomed to that kind of heat.
So remember to please heed to those warnings there.
Ben, thank you. And just another reminder along with this severe weather, you heard Adrian talk about this throughout the morning, the heat advisory they will be facing for the next few days. MedStar, the paramedics in Tarrant County activated their emergency plan. Well, yesterday, because of the dangerous conditions, they are putting a higher priority on calls for patients outside. Right now, the state's power grid is operating under normal conditions.
Storms, and folks are already having to deal with the heat. They're really concerned about it. They're feeling it right now. It's already catching it up for some folks. There's no doubt about that. Some people just really concerned about it. Our Olivia Leach, she was out there today spending time with folks, just trying to cool down, and she spoke with MedStar to help you plan for those sizzling temperatures ahead.
We knew it was coming, but even this Dallas native was stunned by the heat this weekend.
I wasn't ready for the actual summer. You know, it was kind of creeping up.
But Brianna and her daughter were staying cool at the fountains at Clyde Warren Park today and staying in the shade.
Because if I take it off, it's really, really hot. And when I put it back, it feels a lot better.
Bye! Some families spent the day at the Lake Highlands North Recreation Center's splash pad, hoping the cool waters there could help them stay cool.
It's so hot!
MedStar says they often get a spike in heat-related calls this time of year. They've already had 110 since May 1st, and temperatures like this, heat exhaustion and heat stroke are a real concern.
So heat exhaustion is when the body begins to have heat fatigue. People will be sweaty, they'll still be conscious, their skin will be cool, a little bit clammy maybe.
If left untreated, heat exhaustion can turn into heat stroke, which could be deadly. MedStar says when the temperature soars above 90 degrees, you should remember these tips. Always drink plenty of water during the day. Stay in a well-ventilated place with a fan or air conditioning, and wear light or loose clothing if you do go outdoors.
But the best plan is to not go outside if you don't have to when the weather is super hot. Stay indoors with air conditioning, especially if you have underlying medical conditions.
According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, in just 10 minutes, a car can heat up by 20 degrees. So never leave your child unattended in a car, and make it a habit to check your entire car before you leave.
Just figure out some ways to remind yourself that your kids are in the back of the car, especially for new parents who aren't used to summers in Texas.
With temperatures expected to hit above 100 degrees this week, MedStar will be on high alert.
Get ready now and prepare for that now.
In Dallas, Olivia Leach, CBS News, Texas.
Looks like a lot of fun in downtown Dallas earlier.
Now, MedStar says it officially treated 5 patients during this morning's Opal Lee Walk to Freedom. 2 people were taken to the hospital, and another 20 suffered heat-related illnesses on scene and were removed from the walk to rehydrate.
You know, the heat definitely had an impact on a Juneteenth celebration in Fort Worth, sending people to the hospital at Opal Lee's Walk for Freedom. MedStar treated 5 patients for heat-related illnesses, with 2 of them going to the hospital, and 20 others were treated at a cooling station.
Good evening, I'm Meredith Land.
And I'm Brian Curtis. We begin with the dangerous heat. Right now, we are under an excessive heat warning.
But that did not stop Dr. Opal Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth, from walking her 2.5-mile walk for freedom in Fort Worth. The 96-year-old safely ended her walk at Evans Plaza in historic Southside just before noon. But during that walk, MedStar said it treated 5 patients for heat-related illness. Dr. Lee was not one of them. We do know 2 of the people who had to be treated were taken to the hospital.
And just being outside for a little bit in this humid heat can be overwhelming. Jason Allen, live for us now at Panther Island in Fort Worth. And Jason, you're learning the water isn't a place to escape today.
It's not, Ken, because stepping outside just for a few minutes, it feels almost like you are stepping inside a sauna. Since early this morning, I've seen 2 people out here in the water at Panther Island, 2 kids, and they were here an hour ago. They are not here now. So this isn't keeping people inside entirely, but when they come out, they are not staying out here long.
As the degrees added up outside Monday, the population dwindled. Playgrounds were abandoned for pavilions with shade. Umbrellas were necessary, even without any rain. And aside from a hardy few who swore they could take the heat.
You don't want to live here. There's Alaska, there's Boston, you can go to all those other places.
This was an inside kind of day. Even the ice cream man was low on the priority list.
You'd rather just stay in the shade?
Yeah, it's much better.
Going into Monday, about a third of MedStar Mobile Health's heat-related illness calls this season had come in the last 4 days. Not every patient was stuck outside either. More than 30% were people in public or commercial buildings, and 15% of them were at home.
This condition is preventable, and folks that are not aware and aren't prepared can find themselves in trouble very quickly.
At the Mateo family stand selling drinks. How are you managing the heat?
Bad.
It was clear that customer behavior today had changed.
People always going to keep coming. If when it's hot, they come for 10 minutes and they leave.
Just long enough to get the kids outside without getting overwhelmed.
No, we live in Texas. I mean, what are you going to do, not live?
And even if you do say, I'm used to it, I live in Texas, MedStar points out these are the kind of conditions a lot of people are not used to. Ken, we actually have more winter storm warnings the last several years in North Texas than we've had excessive heat warnings like we've had the past couple days.
Cole Baker, Doug is off tonight. I want to start with the weather. It's our big story here at 6. The heat has a very serious impact on today's Juneteenth celebration in Fort Worth. MedStar now confirming they treated 5 people for heat-related illness. 2 of those patients did have to go to the hospital, and 20 others needed to be brought into a cooling station to get rehydrated.
We turn now to the severe weather, with officials in Mississippi assessing the damage after multiple tornadoes swept through the state overnight. At least 1 person was killed and nearly 24 people injured after twisters destroyed homes and pulled trees up by their roots. CBS's Omar Villafranca reports tonight on the recovery efforts as more storms and brutal heat is on the way.
Row after row of homes in Lewin, Mississippi were torn to shreds by a powerful tornado that touched down overnight. 1 person was killed and nearly 24 were injured. Emergency responders scrambled to pull survivors from the rubble. Several people were transported to area hospitals.
Next thing I know, all hell break loose.
Alfred Cavalier escaped the storm uninjured. He took cover in his bathroom as the storm passed over his house.
I was shocked to see everything like this here, all the devastation.
At least 26 tornadoes have been reported since Friday, touching down in 10 states from New Jersey to Oklahoma. In Tulsa, Michael Zimmerman was jolted awake when part of a tree fell on his house.
Heard a big boom, and I thought the roof was gone.
More severe weather spun up across the South today. This funnel cloud was captured in Miramar Beach, Florida. No one was hurt. Meanwhile, a heat wave is gripping parts of Texas and Louisiana.
Apply cool water to her entire skin surface while fanning her, okay?
In Fort Worth, calls to 911 are picking up as the temperature rises. There were more than 24 heat-related emergencies from a Juneteenth parade this morning. The heat index hit 113 this afternoon in Fort Worth, and emergency crews are getting ready. What advice do you tell people who are going to an outdoor event?
Be aware of those warning signs that if you start to sweat like crazy, you start to have some muscle cramps, that's your body saying, okay, I'm done.
MedStar says the most common type of heat-related call they get is for heat exhaustion, the symptoms being sweating profusely and cramps, nausea, and dizziness. But medical professionals say if you know you're going to be outside in this heat, they suggest starting to hydrate at least 2 days before and keep hydrating when you're outside. And the best thing to drink, they say, is water. Jerika?
Got to pay attention to your body. Omar Villafranca, thank you.
Well, there she is, Opal Lee, and her Walk for Freedom steps off this morning in Fort Worth. The grandmother of Juneteenth began her walking campaign several years ago to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Today will be the third time it has been recognized as a holiday at the national level. June 19th commemorates the day that slaves in Galveston learned they had been emancipated. Cleo Green live in Fort Worth this morning ahead of the walk. And Cleo, it's going to be an exciting morning, but also it's going to start warming up. Folks need to hydrate if they're going to head out to join the festivities.
Yes, it's going to be a hot one, and I've got some great advice for you coming up here. But, Mark, you know, Miss Opal Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth, is inviting everyone to come on out here and join her for that 2.5-mile walk for freedom. And if you're asking, well, why are we walking 2.5 miles on a very, very hot day? Well, it took Abraham Lincoln, when he signed that Emancipation Proclamation, it took 2.5 years for the slaves in Galveston, Texas, to learn that they were free. So this is a very historic day. It's a celebration. We're going to start things right here at the Evans Avenue Plaza. They're actually building the main stage behind me for some performances and the opening ceremony. It's going to be a great time. But like you said, it is going to be very, very hot. I'm here with MedStar expert Matt Zavatsky here. And we were talking earlier that there are ways for people to prepare before they make their way down here.
Yeah, absolutely right. If you're watching this morning, start hydrating now because it's best to hydrate early. When you're picking out your clothes, wear light-colored, loose-fitting clothing so that you can actually have your body circulate some of that air while you're here.
You know, Greg had mentioned that it's going to be oppressive as well. I guess what are some ways to make sure that you're staying cool, or maybe just realizing, hey, I'm getting a little too hot. I need to calm down.
Yeah, heat exhaustion is that first sign of a heat-related emergency. So people will start profusely sweating. They might get a little bit dizzy. They might get some muscle cramps. That's the first sign that it's time to take a break, go into the shade, try and get out of the heat.
Matt, you've had a busy weekend.
Yes, we've since May 1st, we've had 76 heat-related cases, but 13 this weekend. We're certainly going to have more today, but we're going to have a lot of crews down here helping people make sure they're safe.
And you had mentioned clothing. That's a big deal.
It absolutely is, because if your body is allowed to dissipate heat through the air, that's going to help keep you cool and prevent that heat-related emergency. Light-colored clothing will help reflect the sun so that it doesn't get absorbed into your body.
And, you know, I think something to keep in mind as well, you said, listen, maybe stay away from the coffee and other alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, alcohol and heat don't mix. Caffeine is not great for being out in the heat, so water works great. If you're going to be walking, maybe some sports drinks that have some electrolytes in them will help make sure you get through the walk okay.
Okay, perfect. And then if someone needs help, how can they contact MedStar?
Yeah, best thing to do is to call 911. We're going to have multiple crews down here all morning, all day, so we'll be right nearby to help you if you need it.
All right, good advice there. Matt, thank you so much for joining us here. Once again, you still have time to make your way down here and register to walk. That starts at 9 o'clock, and then they step off for that walk at about 10:45. So it's going to be a good time, a lot of performances, music, everything is going to start around 10:45, but you can come on down here and register so that you can be in that walk and see Miss Opal Lee as well at the top. I'll send it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Cleo. Cleo Green is with us right now.
Yeah, she's in Fort Worth with a look at what you need to know before you head out this morning. Cleo?
Hey there, good morning, Mark and Kara. It is going to be a huge Juneteenth celebration out here. I know it's early, but things start around 9 o'clock. All walkers making their way down here need to check in at about 9 o'clock. It steps off at around 10:45. Now, this is Miss Opal Lee's 2.5-mile walk for freedom. If you're wondering, well, why 2.5 miles? And that's because Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation 2.5 years. It took 2.5 years for that news to reach people in Galveston to free the slaves out there. So this is a historic day, a day to celebrate. You can see some people behind me here at Evans Avenue Plaza setting up because that registration starts at 9 o'clock. Now, I spoke to one of the organizers out here. She said that she's expecting around 2,000 people. It is going to be extremely hot as well. I'm here with Mr. Matt Zavatsky here from MedStar. Good morning. Come a little closer to me here. We were talking earlier this morning. It is really early, right? Yes. How can people prepare before they make their way out here?
Well, first, if they're watching you guys this morning, they need to start hydrating now because you have to pre-hydrate for walks like this, and then obviously stay hydrated the entire time that you're here.
You were saying, stay away from the coffee and, of course, other beverages.
Exactly. Caffeine is not going to be as hydrating as regular drinks, so water is terrific. If you're going to be walking, then obviously a sports drink is good because that has some electrolytes in it. And just try and stay as cool as possible while you're here. Stay in the shade.
With us reaching triple digits as well, clothing is another big issue.
Yeah, light-colored, loose-fitting clothing. So as you're preparing to come out here this morning, make sure that you're selecting things that are going to be like what I'm wearing, something that's light-colored, that's going to be loose to allow some breathing to go on underneath your clothing.
What are some signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion?
Yeah, heat exhaustion, profuse sweating, some dizziness, nausea, maybe a little bit of disorientation. So when you start seeing those signs and symptoms, it's time to stop walking, get into the shade, and ask for help if you need it.
I know you said that you were busy this weekend. You guys have been responding to those heat-related calls already.
Yeah, we've had nearly 80 heat-related calls since May 1st. We just had 13 over the weekend. We certainly anticipate a lot more today. We're going to have multiple crews down here to take care of people, though.
Is anyone more at risk when outside during these, temperatures and elements?
Yeah, certainly people with underlying medical conditions. So people with heart conditions, breathing conditions, those folks we're really going to worry about when they're out here at the walk this morning.
All right, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're going to come back with us around 6:30, so don't go too far. Matt Zavotsky here from MedStar. So, Mark Kerr, I'll send it back to you once again. Registration starts at 9 o'clock this morning. It doesn't feel too hot out here, but I know it's going to get a little hot, very, very hot, sooner than later. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, like we heard, Cleo, the message right now, hydrate if you're heading out to join Miss Opal and everyone else this morning. We hope you
available. Fort Worth's MedStar gives these suggestions in hopes of preventing heat-related illness. Hydrate. Make sure to drink plenty of water. Ventilate. Stay in a place with circulating air. Cover up if you're going outside. Wear light-colored and loose-fitted attire. Limit your activity outside. And last but not least, check on your loved ones and your elderly family members, friends, and neighbors.
Higher. Shannon is live in Dallas this morning with some advice on how to handle today's excessive heat warning. Good morning.
Good morning, Brandon. Right, so an excessive heat warning. Evan tells me that's actually a step above a heat advisory. So this is really serious, and it can be dangerous. Tarrant County Ambulance Service MedStar now sending a warning. They say it's especially dangerous for children, the elderly, and people with underlying medical conditions. MedStar has responded to 76 heat-related calls since May 1st, and 13 of those were just over the weekend. They say people with heat exhaustion will start profusely sweating, become dizzy, and have muscle cramps. If left untreated, it can turn to heat stroke.
It's best to start hydrating about 2 days before you're going to be outside. If you notice that you're getting thirsty and you need to drink when you're outside, it's too late. The tank is already run dry. Many times our crews have to use significant amounts of IV fluids to try and rehydrate people, and that's much faster than drinking it yourself.
MedStar is reminding people not to leave children or pets in a car, even if the AC is running. A car increases by 10 degrees every minute. Now, 100 degrees, nothing abnormal for Texans. Those of us who've been here many years are used to the extreme heat. But the feels like temperature today, Evan says it could reach 115 degrees in that feels like zone. So pretty hot. Lauren and Brandon.
When it comes to the heat in North Texas, MedStar says it's responded to 76 heat-related patients since May 1st, including 4 just yesterday. With dangerous feels-like temperatures over the next couple of days, we reached out to the experts who say make sure you wear sunscreen and drink lots of water. When you're active in Texas heat, drink at least 8 ounces of water every 20 minutes and watch the clock.
Get out early. Get out early and get home by like noon.
That's great advice. Headaches, dizziness, and nausea are common signs of heat exhaustion. Experts say putting your hands and feet in cold water will help get the body temperature down.
Here for you all morning long. This is Good Day on Fox 4.
Welcome back on this Monday morning. All right, here's a shocker. It's Texas, and it's really hot. North Texas is preparing for another day under an excessive heat warning. And, of course, as the temperature goes up, the risk of a heat-related injury also goes up. Folks over at MedStar are telling us they responded to more than a dozen calls over the weekend, and they say residents who are new to the area might think that they're ready for it, but they're not. Evan?
Not ready.
Evan is ready.
Raise your hand if you're not ready.
I'm not ready.
Raise your hand if you're not ready.
I'd rather pass, but I can't.
Evan's probably the only one ready.
Rise and shine, North Texas. So glad you are starting your day with NBC5 today at 6:30. I'm Deborah Ferguson.
And I'm Laura Harris. People get ready to celebrate Juneteenth, but please stay aware of the heat.
Yeah, exactly. We do have another excessive heat warning on the way for North Texas. It's expected to last through Tuesday night. The heat index gets up to 120 degrees in some areas, and that concerns health agencies such as the ambulance service MedStar.
It's really important for people to understand that it's the heat index that causes the heat-related emergencies. It's a combination of the temperature with the humidity.
Definitely something to watch out for as you head to those Juneteenth events today.
Into law. If you are planning to head out to a Juneteenth celebration today, like the walk happening in Fort Worth, be sure to bring plenty of water. Today's temperatures are going to be dangerously hot. Joining us now to talk more about this, we have Matt Zavadsky, who is the Chief Strategic Integration Officer for MedStar. Matt, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So talk to us about some of your biggest concerns when temperatures heat up the way that we're expecting them to today.
There are a lot of people coming out for the walk today that might not normally get up at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and go out and walk. And this temperature is going to make people with underlying medical conditions, folks that aren't used to being out in these kind of conditions, very susceptible to a heat-related emergency. We're very concerned about that.
And Matt, you guys are out there to kind of monitor people who are going to be in the heat. What kind of symptoms do Texans themselves need to be on the lookout for? And how do you think they respond? How should they respond if they think somebody themselves or with them is suffering from a heat-related illness?
Yeah, the first advice is to make sure that people, as they're getting up, watching y'all and wanting to come down this morning, start hydrating now. When you're here, hydrate the entire time that you're here. If you start to suffer from dizziness, fatigue, you're profusely sweating, those are all going to be signs of heat exhaustion. You want to get out of the heat into a shaded area, preferably a cool area, keep hydrating, and we're going to have multiple crews here. You can always ask for help and we'll come help you make sure you get rehydrated.
All right, Matt Zavadsky with MedStar 911. Thanks for taking the time to join us and help keep Texans safe out there in this triple-digit heat.
We turn now to the severe weather, with officials in Mississippi assessing the damage after multiple tornadoes swept through the state overnight. At least one person was killed and nearly 24 people injured after twisters destroyed homes and pulled trees up by their roots. CBS's Omar Villafranca reports tonight on the recovery efforts as more storms and brutal heat is on the way.
Row after row of homes in Lewin, Mississippi were torn to shreds by a powerful tornado that touched down overnight. One person was killed and nearly 24 were injured. Emergency responders scrambled to pull survivors from the rubble. Several people were transported to area hospitals.
Next thing I know, all hell break loose.
Alfred Cavalier escaped the storm uninjured. He took cover in his bathroom as the storm passed over his house.
I was shocked to see everything like this here, all the devastation.
At least 26 tornadoes have been reported since Friday, touching down in 10 states from New Jersey to Oklahoma. In Tulsa, Michael Zimmerman was jolted awake when part of a tree fell on his house.
Heard a big boom, and I thought the roof was gone.
More severe weather spun up across the South today. This funnel cloud was captured in Miramar Beach, Florida. No one was hurt. Meanwhile, a heat wave is gripping parts of Texas and Louisiana.
Apply cool water to her entire skin surface while fanning her, okay?
In Fort Worth, calls to 911 are picking up as the temperature rises. There were more than 24 heat-related emergencies from a Juneteenth parade this morning. The heat index hit 113 this afternoon in Fort Worth, and emergency crews are getting ready.
What advice do you tell people who are going to an outdoor event?
Be aware of those warning signs that if you start to sweat like crazy, you start to have some muscle cramps, that's your body saying, okay, I'm done.
MedStar says the most common type of heat-related call they get is for heat exhaustion, the symptoms being sweating profusely and cramps, nausea, and dizziness. But medical professionals say if you know you're going to be outside in this heat, they suggest starting to hydrate at least 2 days before and keep hydrating when you're outside. And the best thing to drink, they say, is water. Jerika?
Got to pay attention to your body. Omar Villafranca, thank you.